Hey, welcome to X-Oriente, the new voice of brotherhood. We're back again.
One more time.
One more time. We're doing this on a Wednesday night, not our normal Sunday night, mainly because I had to work. I'm hitting like two simultaneous projects, and it's just killing me.
Ouch.
Yeah, that's the madmen, the life of the madmen, right?
Yep, that's pretty much it.
Anyway, I'm one of your hosts, Eric Diamond.
I'm your other host, Jason Van Dyke.
And you are watching, hopefully, X-Oriente. And a couple of bits of housekeeping. First, I want to welcome some new executive producers. Todd M. Ricker, Jeff Woosley, Jeffrey Morris, and David Connolly. Welcome and thank you for your support.
Thanks, guys.
And your kits will be going out shortly. And if you have not received a kit, please send me an email. Do not let me forget, and we'll make sure that we get those out to you. Anything else? Anything going on in masonry?
Not really.
Okay.
Not that I can think of. We just talked about it tonight, but Masonic Week is coming up.
Oh, that's
here
right.
in DC.
Masonic Week.
End of February.
Mm-hmm.
That's really all I can think of right now. Unless you're in DC, and then Masters and Wardens Association does their annual meeting at Pinstripes Bowling Alley in Georgetown. Now that's not true. Not true. I'm sorry. Free heavy hors d'oeuvres and beer and bowling and bocce.
Heavy hors d'oeuvres. What are they like?
Yeah, it's like a chicken satay and stuff like that.
Oh, I thought it was like uranium and
right. California.
Iridium.
Yes. All of the bottom half of the table of the elements.
That's right.
Yours for the taking.
And a bottle of Tums.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So I will be at Masonic Week. If you will be at Masonic Week, and you want
I'll be at Masonic
catch
Week.
me, you'll be. Yeah. You live at Masonic Week.
Yeah. Ish.
Yeah. Ish.
It's in Alexandria though, so.
True.
I don't know my passport renewed yet. I got to get on that. I'm going to Japan.
Yeah. So I was thinking maybe. Well, we still have a couple more weeks. I was thinking maybe we might try to do like maybe a meetup or something. That might be kind of cool.
That'd be fun. That'd be really fun, actually.
Yeah.
We could do a meetup. That's a great idea, actually.
Here's what I really want. I really want to go to back to Gatsby's Tavern. That's like one of my favorite
That's
places.
fine. Listen, I'm down for that.
Okay.
Gatsby's is fun. Otherwise, if we need more space, depending on how many people want to do a meetup, we go over here. There's a Yard House, which is just a chain restaurant, but they serve actual yards of beer.
Not a meter house.
No.
This is America.
None of them.
America.
That's right. Right. We don't have Lutherans running the place.
So listen, if you're going to be in Washington D.C. during Masonic Week, that is the week. I think it's February 21st through the 24th. Yeah. Let me know. Drop us a line at xoriente@gmail.com or leave a, ping us on Facebook and let us know. And if we get enough interest, we'll set something up.
Right. Well, I mean, we're going to drink beer anyway.
Yeah, we will be drinking beer.
And we'll probably sit and talk until the wee hours in the morning anyway.
Indeed.
But if you'd like to join us and do that, you're more than welcome.
And if you watch the show, the conversations are always good.
Right. They're way worse in person. So.
They only get better with a yard of beer.
That's exactly right. They tend to get more sweary and a little bit more angry.
Yeah.
Yeah. So whatever.
A little bit more sweary.
Yeah. Right.
Anyway, today it's kind of interesting. Like I have this list of show topics. In fact, I can show it to you. Here's the list. The list of show topics are quite a long list, but every once in a while something kind of pops into the media and it kind of makes for an interesting discussion. So I thought we'd tackle it, and that is recently there was a Gillette ad. It was a short film, I think almost 2 minutes long, Now, let me ask you a question, because I'm not a big football watcher, and even if I was, I have not. I mean, ever since I saw the Bears just lose stunningly, I know. But ever since I saw that, I've been so busy that I just really haven't had time to do that. But I heard that it had been broadcast on like one of the football games. Do you know if that's true?
I didn't catch it live. No.
Okay.
And I was casually watching the playoff games over the weekend, but because the greatest team on the planet wasn't participating this year, voluntarily, of course, we decided to let somebody else have a go, and then the Bears screwed it up. But because Packers weren't playing, I casually watch.
Yeah.
I did watch that though, with great pleasure.
Man.
It was beautiful. I'm sorry for your loss.
Yeah. Anyway, it's all right. We're whatever. So it's only football. So anyway, Gillette put this ad out, and let's just watch it. Let's watch it in its entirety, because we'll talk about it. Give me 1 second here. Oh, here we go.
Bullying.
The Me Too movement against sexual harassment.
Masculinity.
Is this the best a man can get? Is it? We can't hide from it.
Sexual harassment is taking over.
It's been going on far too long. We can't laugh it off.
Who's the daddy?
What I actually think she's trying to say.
Making the same old excuses.
Boys will be boys. Boys will be boys. Boys will be boys.
But something finally changed.
Allegations regarding sexual assault and sexual harassment.
But she says he's
And there will be no going back. Because we believe in the best in men.
Men need to hold other men accountable.
Smile, sweetie. Come on.
To say the right thing. To act the right way.
Bro, not cool.
Some already are. In ways big
Yo, men.
and small.
I am strong.
But some is not enough.
It's not how we treat each other, okay?
Because the boys watching today will be the men of tomorrow.
Thoughts, reactions?
I love the commercial. I really do.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's fantastic, and and a great message for someone who thought about their brand a little differently. I mean, marketing wise, it's genius. Now, is it as genius as the Nike ad? No, because they did it first, and just reaped the benefits and the rewards from it. On just a business scale, right? And this is just my ad week sort of critique of it. But I thought it fit really well with what they do. I think it's a great position to take. What's funny to me is that there's controversy about this because it's an easy position to take, right? Here's your slogan is the best a man can get. And what you're doing is saying, oh, well, let's take some, societal stuff, some big kind of newsy things like the Me Too movement and toxic masculinity, those kinds of things. And let's incorporate that into our brand, the best a man can get, and really talk about what does that mean? And maybe we sell some razors, but we get a lot of attention for this, right? Yeah. By really not staking out the high ground, just going, yeah, the high ground's a great place to be. I mean, they're doing nothing radical here. But saying like, hey, it's bad to be a jerk. Wow. Deep. So, I think it's hilarious that there's backlash to this
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is, so first of all, like, speaking as a guy who works in advertising, I can tell you that this kind of marketing, it's called, it's called purpose-led marketing, and has been going on for a while now.
Sure.
One of the first to do it actually was Procter and Gamble with Like a Girl, right? So Like a Girl was Tampax and Always, right? And they created this whole thing about, basically they interviewed young girls, throw like a girl, run like a girl, and then saw how disempowering that phrase was, like, you throw like a girl, right? And so they kind of turned that on its head and turned that into a really, and it's one of those things that, like, the agency that did it is the agency that I work for.
Sure.
And and it's one of those case studies that is a great, it's a great kind of feather in your cap. But so this has been going on for a while, for at least a few years, and I think it's interesting that people are comparing it to the Nike ad with Colin Kaepernick, right?
Right, because that's just it's just proximity bias. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
they're comparing it because it just happened. But
well, and because the Nike ad also stimulated a lot of controversy. I mean, I don't think anybody, when Being a Girl came out, people weren't like, oh, well, this is.
Well, and here's the thing, right? Is that I get the controversy that surrounds Colin Kaepernick, because I think that the things that Kaepernick stood for, what he did, the movement that he led, certainly had more conversation around it. Because I think that everyone says, oh, violence is bad, but there was a lot of there's a lot of talk about race in that, and a lot of deeply held, long simmering things that were going on there. So I get the controversy there. I really do. But this, I mean, what's controversial about, hey, you probably shouldn't, basically rape in the workplace. That's bad. Well, really, thanks for letting us all know about that, Gillette. And so the controversy around that, like, anyone who says, like, Brian Stewart just popped in and said the backlash because people get offended that they're being told to be better. Yeah. Yeah. And then he follows up with, I think Gillette, one like that need to be said. I couldn't agree more. It's what Masonry stands for. Literally, we actually say it to people in this stupid catchphrase, we take good men and make them better. We might as well be that Gillette ad. And so, like, I find it funny. And I've seen a couple Masons like get like really, this stupid Gillette ad.
Yeah,
and
well, so it's interesting because I think what it's doing is it's putting a stake in the ground to kind of redefine masculinity, right?
Sure.
That is, ironically, that's threatening to certain people's masculinity, right?
Which is hilarious.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of ironic, but I think, well, first of all, let me go back and give you some of the kind of the marketing,
sure,
whys and wherefores as to why are brands doing this now, and the reason is because of millennials, right? So this is a generational thing, and millennials and also Gen Z coming up behind millennials are very concerned with making sure that the brands that they buy reflect their personal values, right?
Yeah.
Right. And so
back in our age, we used to call that social justice.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes sometimes those positions that brands take can take on kind of a political flavor, right? And could be kind of into social justice. Sometimes they're just simply you know, you know, like a social thing, right?
Sure.
Like, right. So, you know, sometimes, like, for example, Patagonia is famous for, you know, their environmental stance on things, right? And so,
Yeah, absolutely.
and what's interesting is that the brands that do take a stand on certain things and are consistent with that stand, right, tend to do very well. They tend to be,
Yeah.
they tend to
Yeah.
become quite iconic, you know,
Mhm.
and well known. And I think some of the criticism might be, and I'll give you an example. So we talked.
Well, I was
we
just going to
talked-
say,
yeah, go
I
ahead.
was going to say, I just had an epiphany too. Here's a great example of a brand that's done really well doing it. Gander Mountain, because Gander Mountain is huge into environmental issues, especially those that revolve around hunting and hunting sports. So they're big into wetland conservation for habitats for waterfowl. Gander Mountain is massive into that. So sorry.
No, no,
It just popped into my head.
Yeah, no, it's a good example, and more, you know, what you know, what a lot of brands are coming to understand is that if they don't have a position, they're at a disadvantage to the brands that do take a position on this.
Yeah, 100%.
And typically, the more consumable the product, the more important it is to have a stand other than, you know, hey, we make a good product, because
Yeah, that's interesting.
right, because then what happens is that those things become commoditized. So
Sure.
you know, a good example is, like, you know, now you've got you know, Gillette, which has had, you know, since they came out with the what was it, the Mach 3, I think, they've kind of had a pretty easy time of it until they got so expensive that, you know, it opened the door for people like Harry's and Dollar Shave Club and stuff like that, and all of a sudden, right, they've now have to, you know, kind of, I think what it is that those products become commoditized, and it's a natural sort of thing, and so it's becoming more important to say, okay, well, you gotta be more than just a product. You gotta be something that people can identify with.
Let me ask a business question, and I don't know if you know the answer to this or not, but is just off the top of my head, is Gillette owned by Wilkinson?
No, I don't think they are. I think Gillette. I don't know who Gillette is owned by. I think it might be owned. I think they might be their own thing. I don't know.
They're not Unilever.
They actually might be Procter and Gamble now.
Interesting. Okay.
I don't know.
Well, there we go.
But
okay. Sorry,
yeah.
sorry. I mean to derail that. Okay.
No, it's okay. So so anyway, so that's why brands do it, and you're going to see more of it, right? Because it works. The question is the message, is the stance that they're taking consistent with the values of the brand? And this is where, you know, you can start asking Gillette, you know, is that really what you're about? Or, you know, is this a cynical attempt to sort of appeal to millennials, or is this something for reals? And honestly, time will tell, you know, like for example, we talked about the Live with Chivalry ad that Chivas did a few years ago. We talked about it on the show. You know, we said that, gosh, it's almost like they're almost like co-opting Freemasonry anyway, right? So
exactly.
You know, so that was a campaign, and it was a good one. It was great. You know, are they the brand about chivalry? You know, well, I haven't really seen very much from them to suggest yes or no, and, you know, maybe it's just because they're not advertising or whatever. But, you know, so I think there's that, you know, like if you look at the trade press, right, that's sort of the criticism. But some of the criticism has been like super vitriolic, and, you know, one guy, I saw just a hilarious tweet this morning where this guy said, well, you know, you know, toxic masculinity served us well in Normandy. yeah, that's, like it's a far cry from like, mansplaining something to, a woman in your workplace and
You know,
invading,
toxic masculinity got us to the moon. So
yeah,
shut up.
yeah, right. So
Awesome.
that's happening. And so I wanted
That's
to
awesome.
talk a little bit about toxic masculinity, right? Because this is gonna make people really, really mad, and I don't apologize for it, but I understand if you are, and why. But I back in like, I think it was like 2012, I was a member of the Widow Sons, right, which is the Masonic Motorcycle Riders Association, and I had kind of a bad experience with toxic masculinity, to the point where I thought long and hard about it. And I realized that the values of Freemasonry were fundamentally incompatible with biker culture. Right. And that was my conclusion, and so I resigned from the Widow Sons, and I always thought about doing a show called, the worst mistake I ever made in Masonry. Right. But
Right.
I never did it, mostly because there are good people in the Widow Sons, and I don't want to tar the whole organization with with one brush. I just felt like, when you look at the because I'm not a biker guy, right? I didn't come out of biker culture. I don't live the life, I just joined it because I wanted to ride with brothers. That was,
Sure.
I like to ride, and I like brothers, and what could be better than riding with brothers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there was so much baggage that went along with it, and there was this kind of toxic masculinity where, it was about like just things that just were like, made me uncomfortable. Like, I would go to a big party, and they would have a raffle for like guns and whiskey, and I just thought, this is not, like, look, I'm not saying that Masonry has to be dry, and we don't have to be like,
Sure.
moral paragons of virtue, and like, there's no room for any fun. It just made me uncomfortable. Right.
No, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. I get it. But yeah, I think a good point. It just popped up, which Abe Metz. Hi, Abe. I guess some would say our fraternity is toxic masculinity. I think there are parts of it that are. I think Abe brings up a really interesting point.
Yeah.
And that's what you're just getting at, right?
Yeah.
Is there's parts of our fraternity that are that way. Now, I think what's interesting about that, Abe, is that I think that you're 100% right. And I think that we are seen from the outside a lot of times as kind of a toxic masculinity. We're seen as sort of an archaic relic of a bygone age, where it was okay for the men will get together in their lodge, smoking cigars and having a few snorts after work, and boys will be boys when they do that, but I think that the fraternity itself has evolved more, and I think it's actually done pretty well keeping up with the times, where we've held on to traditions that are worthwhile, like, putting on a suit to go to a meeting, trying to educate ourselves in the company of our brethren, and sort of gotten rid of a lot of the stuff that is outdated and quite frankly, society has moved past. So I actually think that we've done pretty well with that.
Yeah. I'm going to put a stake in the ground pretty hard and say that when you talk about like the body of Freemasonry, there is nothing in the body of Freemasonry that supports hypermasculinity, right? And that's actually that's the technical term, right? We call it toxic masculinity, but actually the psychology term is hypermasculinity, and it was the term was coined by these two guys, Donald Mosher and Mark Sirkin, back in 1984, and they were doing some studies. And so what the way that they were looking into sort of like the phenomenon of machismo,
Right.
and they sort of identified hypermasculinity as three primary traits, right? Number one, callous sexual attitudes towards women. Number two, the belief that violence is manly, right? And that violence is an acceptable way to solve problems. And number three, the experience of danger as something exciting, right? And so what that does is it encourages men to engage in risky behavior, right? Because that's, we're always trying to push the edge, push the envelope. We can be more violent, and and this is, I think it's actually kind of feeding into the backlash, right? Is that, if somebody dares criticize us, we get all defensive, and, we have to kind of counter lash out, because that's what
Right.
you do. That's how
Right.
you protect your manhood. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Or we dismiss them by, calling people, oh, snowflake, or,
Sure.
sugar buns or whatever, like in other words, we kind of go on the offensive and be offensive.
Right.
And so, I think what that leads to is, kind of some secondary effects, right? So one of them is sort of this idea that emotional control is a sign of toughness, right? We don't ask for help.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's unmanly to ask for help. It's a sign
Right.
of weakness. Right.
Right.
To be emotionally hardened or indifferent, especially toward women, is to display character. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then this idea of the repression of anything that makes us vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And so that actually has some pretty wide ranging effects. And I think in the last, I'd say 40 years, we have been socialized, and especially in our media, to take on these attitudes. So if you look at movies like
Sure.
The Terminator, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or
Mm-hmm.
First Blood, or, even more recent ones like Fast and the Furious, right? We engage in risky behavior, right? We're zipping around in cars on this, on the street in Tokyo, drifting and whatever. Movies are more violent than they ever have been, and that's the way to solve. I mean, look at all those movies in the 80s where,
All right. Wait.
right?
All right. So wait. Let me just let me play devil's advocate to that,
Mm-hmm.
and let me just say that that doesn't necessarily mimic our society, but rather reflects it. So, saying as our society, as men have become a little bit more enlightened, not a lot, but a little bit, right? A little bit more enlightened. Not every woman that you see, is a secretary, a homemaker, that kind of a thing. Those roles have started to, those walls are starting to break down. They're starting to break down. And so maybe what this is that it's an outlet. So our entertainment is actually just an outlet for those baser, I hesitate to say needs, because it's Maslowian, and I don't really want to go there with that, but it serves as an outlet to get rid of kind of the want or the need to be that hyper masculine thing, and you can live your fantasy out on a movie screen for an hour and a half.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to go out and actually race your car down the street like an idiot and kill yourself, right? And so, is it not just fantasy?
No, and I'll tell you why. Because it's not the actions themselves, right? If I watch, here's a perfect example of how like an idea has kind of been corrupted, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've ever watched Mission Impossible, the
Sure.
TV series, right? So the
Yeah,
TV
absolutely.
series, for those who've never seen it, right? It was a TV series in the 1960s,
Mm-hmm.
and it involved these groups of people who would concoct these elaborate schemes to get something done. like maybe, get the leader of a country to think that he was somewhere else, or, they were always these like really kind of crazy things. And they would create these like cons that would, and it was sort of interesting to see how they, how they would set them up. Right. That was sort of the show. It was very cerebral. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And along comes, my good friend, Tom Cruise, right. Who basically turns it into a roller coaster ride. Right. I mean, there's nothing, right. So it's not the stunts themselves. It's not the risky behavior itself, right? Indiana Jones is a rollicking good time, right? It's not the actions themselves. I'm not saying that like violence causes this. What I'm saying is how men are portrayed, right? Socializes in a certain way. Right. So you have a guy, I mean, Indiana Jones is a good example, right? Here's a guy who's like he's a
That's
doctor
fair.
of archaeology, right? And the only way he can make it in the world is swinging from a whip and shooting people. And you know what I mean? Like, so
it's that he's a doctor of archaeology, and that's the conceit. Not
exactly.
Do you not understand what I'm saying?
He's an adventurer, right? He engages
Right.
in this, like, and it's exciting. Yeah.
He's cool, and all the women love him because he's actually an adventurer, not because he's a professor.
Right. So
well-educated,
it's more
dapperly
about
dressed
how
man.
they're portrayed. And then that kind of trickles down into, like advertising, like is a good example. So,
Sure.
Axe body spray ads just a few years ago. I mean, those were, wow. Talk about, callous sexual attitudes toward women, wow.
Well, and that's
Here,
and
hold my
honestly,
balls,
that Gillette ad actually parodies those ads.
Yeah.
In the full ad. So, I mean, 100%. I don't know. I just,
the Old Spice, Isaiah Mustafa ads, right?
But those are parodies as well.
Those are parodies, right? They're parodies, right? Because it's gotten to that point, I think.
Correct.
So I'm not, look, this isn't like blame, we are the media. This is not blame the media.
That's exactly right.
Right. But what I'm saying is that the society that we live in reinforces these attitudes, right? And so then it becomes the type of, see what I think this is. I think this is a reaction. I don't think it's a compensation. I think it's a reaction. I think as women have gained power and are empowering themselves, right? Men feel threatened by that, because if your idea in the 1950s of what it was to be manly was to support your family, to protect them, right? To be the dad, right? To what I say, when that gets threatened because women are now empowered, what does that mean for manhood? Where do we go with that? So we tend
now
to
what's your role?
Exactly. Now what's your role? So we swing to a more extreme place.
Right. And here's what I think is interesting in the tie into Masonry with that too, is that Masonry, we're not telling you not to, this isn't saying don't be a man or anything like that. And but what Masonry does is tells you that men aren't simple. We're not just go bash, hurt, like you're not just the provider. Right. Men are much more complex than that. There are many, many levels. And we encourage you to explore those things while circumscribing your passions, right? That's what that's all about, is it's about to tamp down the desire to do the quick, easy, simple thing, and instead reflect, circumscribe your desires, understand that it's passion that's pushing you in that direction, and instead think it through, make a reasoned and rational decision.
Yeah.
And could there be any better way to explore one's masculinity than that? Right.
Yeah.
And so what's interesting about that, I mean, that sounds simple, and I said it in a few seconds, but the vast majority of outsiders don't see us that way, which goes, back to Abe's comment.
Yeah. Well, Abe just made another comment. He said, but come on, baby, it's cold outside is now being called sexist and misogynist. right? And yeah, that's true. And it's because how we view culture as a society changes, right? And
Sure.
I don't personally like. I mean, I know kind of the backstory of the song. Like it
Sure.
was written by a married couple, and they
Yeah.
would do it where the woman was singing like "Stay,"
Right. Yeah.
right,
Right. Uh-huh. Exactly.
and but it kind of took on a life of its own, and so
Sure.
you have to kind of like look at it through the eyes of the person today, not necessarily the eyes of where it was, um,
Right.
you know, like back when it was written, right? And so there's
Sure.
a whole like there's a lot of like it can kind of get to an absurd level, like
Yeah.
Popeye cartoons are not aired.
You want to, you want to see something and watch something that will take you back, literally make you go, "Oh my God, did that just happen?"
Mm-hmm.
Go back and watch. I want to say it's I think it's in Goldfinger. Go back and watch Goldfinger. There's a scene towards the beginning of the movie where he's at the pool. He's at a pool. He's sitting in his swimsuit, and this bikini girl is sitting next to him, and the it's either Goldfinger, one of the bad guys, comes over to the pool to come and talk to him, to Bond, and Bond looks over at the woman and literally slaps her on the ass and goes, "Now run along. It's man talk." It actually happens,
Yeah.
like that. That was, and no, everyone's
Yeah.
the man said,
Yeah.
man said it's man talk time.
And unfortunately, like a lot of things, it makes you uncomfortable to see it now, and it's the kind of thing too.
But that was the past, and the thing is that I think it serves as a great reminder of well, we came from that, right?
Yeah.
Every time I watch it, I go, "Oh my God, how did that happen?" You know?
You want to be really shocked. Watch the uncensored version of Holiday Inn. They do a whole
Holiday
number
Inn.
in blackface. I mean, it's just like you're like,
Jeez.
whoa,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
And it's uncomfortable to watch, but that's
It's where we were.
It's where we were.
It is. Yeah. 100%. So.
And so I think what happens with hypermasculinity is that you get to this belief that in order to be a man, you can't in any way resemble a woman. So anything that strikes anybody as being even remotely feminine somehow strips you of your masculinity, right? So that kind of includes like the kinds of things we consume, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do we drink Chardonnay or do we drink beer? You know what I mean? Like it kind of starts to color men's choices, based on how they think people perceive them. So any sort of
Mm-hmm.
show of tenderness, compassion, empathy, strictly off limits, right? In the hypermasculine world. Now, the problem for me is that Freemasonry, and I've always said this, like I came to realize that the purpose of Freemasonry, like when you strip away all of that stuff, right, is that Freemasonry teaches men to be emotionally close and intimate with each other in a masculine setting, in a setting that isn't sexual. It's not, it's not emasculating in any way. We care for each other. We go visit, our sick brethren. We, we comfort their families. We take care of them, right? In a way, like just the idea of like needing alms, we do it in a way that, that teaches, dignity. And so that's why I feel like Masonry at its core is completely antithetical to this idea of hypermasculinity. Like Masonry teaches you how not to be hypermasculine. Right.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more.
And I think what makes me, disappointed, is when and again, you know me, I'm always complaining about social media. When I see on social media people who are espousing opinions under the sign, like they have a square and compasses in their profile picture that are fundamentally incompatible with Masonry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so, and here's the problem, and going back to like hypermasculinity for a second, because the problem is that it actually hurts us, and by us I mean men, more than it hurts anybody else. Like it's bad for women, right? But it's worse for men, because what happens is that it makes us more isolated and alone, right? So if you can't ask for help, right, you feel like I'm suffering. That makes me weak. That makes me unmanly. And I don't want to expose that to my friends because they might think that I'm not being a man, or they might tell me to man up. Right. And so that leads to depression, anger, resentment, even rage, right? Even it actually feeds into, I think as men get more stressed, both economically and socially, they retreat into this sort of like, He-Man kind of world. Right.
Well, right. Because again, it's simple, right?
Yeah.
And it's simple is comforting.
And we know
change, complexity, those things are hard, and they're really uncomfortable a lot of times.
Yeah.
And if you want to be better, those are the worlds you have to choose to live in. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Here's another good another good football quote for you. Bill Parcells, the famous football coach, is famous for telling people that telling his players, think of your career as you being on a treadmill, because if you're not running forward is just okay. That means you're staying in the same place. You better run real hard to get forward just a little bit. And if you stop for a second, you're off, and it's going to hurt a lot when you fall. And that is how you succeed at life. You either have a brisk jog to keep pace with those that are around you, or you start sprinting to see if you can get an inch forward. But if you stop, you're going to fall on your face. It's the simple way out, but it's going to hurt. It's not a good option for you.
Yeah.
And I've always thought that was a great metaphor for how to live your life and how to succeed. But
I don't know,
again,
it sounds kind of treadmill-y to me. It sounds like
it does.
It sounds kind of pointless and depressing. Like you have to be running.
It's hard. No, it's hard, and that's his point, which is that if you're doing work, work and exciting, it's work, and so but that, and it's hard because you got to keep a pace just to stay where you are. If you hope to go forward, you better pick that pace up and work twice as hard to make any gains. So I think that all in all, I think Masonry gives you the tools to live like that. It tells you that life right off the bat, this isn't going to be a simple black and white thing. We teach you right away, don't confuse the symbol for the thing it symbolizes, right? And that's a concept, man. And that is not simplicity. That doesn't mean, hey, white is good, black hat bad, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That ain't what we're talking about.
Mike Hambrecht in the comments said Freemasonry helps maintain our masculinity and allowing us to feel okay with our emotions. And he also pointed out that grieving can be tough for men because we're supposed to be strong and not show emotion. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, and I think,
Mike, you're getting likes. Done.
Yeah. So so here's my question, is, as an institution, how are we positioned to either support or combat hypermasculine behavior? I guess what I'm asking is this, modern Freemasonry, and by modern Freemasonry, I mean, Freemasonry after 1980 has been
right.
unbelievably famous for taking a stand on nothing, right? Right?
Sure. Yeah.
Because we're so diverse that we don't want to risk alienating what few members we have left by saying, this is what we I mean, I remember when the Scottish Rite, I mean, I don't remember, but I mean, I know that the Scottish Rite in years past, took a stand against, what is it? Parochial education.
Yeah.
And,
they did.
and took a very hard public education
stance. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And they've since,
and that was all just because, can't let the Catholics get at our kids.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
But they could, put it this way. They could have been like, no, down with the Catholic education, up with the Protestant education. They didn't. They said, no. It's important to have secular education because that was consistent with the values of Freemasonry. Is that there's some things that, where politics and religion shouldn't enter, and the school is one of them. Right.
Right. Sure. Yeah. Makes sense.
And so we don't really take positions like that anymore, but should we? Should we be taking a position on something like this, on what it is to be a man, on how we define masculinity?
Oh.
I know.
Yeah,
I
don't know. I think it's a great question.
I don't either.
Because here's the thing, right? Is let's just walk that back for 2 seconds. Who's we? Yeah, right? Who define we? Is it the Conference of Grand Masters? Is the Conference of Grand Masters in North America together? They write a position on hell, any topic, right? And do they then broadcast that and say this is the stance of Freemasonry in the United States? And then the question becomes, oh, that's great. Who pronounced you the voice of Freemasonry in the United States, right? It's hard. It's really that's a really tough one.
So just to throw a little bit of alcohol in the fire, Mike
so to
just
speak.
pointed out. Just pointed out that we took that stance on alcohol. We certainly did, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sort of.
Kind of. I mean, we don't have that stance on alcohol.
Well, that's because you guys are cool.
Yeah, that's right.
You guys are
we
more
are
manly.
the cool kids.
No, but
that's right. We're the cool kids.
So Abe says we teach nothing. We give the tools. Right. Well,
that's not bad. It's not bad.
I've always rejected that, and here's why. I reject that. I do because you give a guy a bag of tools. You can't just give him a bag of tools and say go build a house. Right?
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I think you're taking it to an extreme. I think that what Abe is saying is that, listen, yeah, we give a few lessons, we give some basics, but then we hope that you'll progress, and that there's no, there's no step-by-step guide to this, and we don't espouse any one way of self-improvement.
Yeah, I think so. Here's
right.
You're right, but
you're not buying my.
I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying what you're selling.
Yeah.
And the reason is I think that's one of the reasons that we're in decline is because if a razor blade company can put a stake in the ground and say this is what we stand for, and we can't even do that, how relevant are we? Right?
Yeah, but listen, Eric, I think we do tell people how we stand, right? I mean, here at its most basic and fundamental, we tell people, listen, no politics, no religion, and we all meet on the level. There you go. That's what we stand for. Do we have to stand for anything more? So here's a good example of that. I used to tell people when I would give tours at the House of the Temple, right? And you Joe Blow off the street, and they would be like, "Oh, I thought Masons were all into charity and stuff, and that's all you guys should do a lot of charity." I'd be like, "Well, yeah. Well, how much charity do you have to do? You don't have to do any." And here's the thing: is that the charitable causes that Masons support, we support because it's a natural outgrowth of the teachings that we learn in a lodge, right?
Mm-hmm.
About being good to our fellow man, things like that. And you don't have to do any of that stuff, but it's a natural outcrop of it. It absolutely happens because of what we teach.
See, I disagree. I think what I would say to that guy is I would say, you have to do something. You don't have to do this. You don't have to, in other words, you don't have to support our charity. You don't have to support any specific charity, but you have to be charitable. If you're not being charitable, you're not being a Mason.
Yeah, but I think that if you listen, if you take the basic teachings, what we basically say to you about being a good, let's just not even say man, but a good person, right? Like a human being. If you do that, I don't have to tell you, hey, you should really be charitable. You intrinsically then will become a charitable person.
Then if that's the case, then we have no need for Masonry. Because if all
no, you're not. I said if you listen to our basic teachings, right? If you adhere to our basic teachings and you internalize those, intrinsically you will become a charitable person.
Yeah, okay, but I don't think that giving people a bunch of symbols and then not hang on.
Okay, all right, okay.
Giving them a bunch of symbols and then sort of unpacking it for them and saying, now go forth and do good.
Just because some tart in a lake gives you a sword, doesn't make you buy things.
Oh, I'm being oppressed. Right. Yeah, so I think that it is incumbent upon us to take positions like that, especially because as an institution, we are uniquely suited and positioned to define masculinity for the modern age. I think we are, and I think that's a dangerous thought. It is a dangerous thought.
I do. I think it's a very dangerous thought, and I think that I don't know if we are capable of doing that.
Oh, I don't know if we're capable of it either, frankly. Right? That's a very different question, right? Yeah. But I think that Masonry kind of demands it of us. Masonry demands that we continually work at it, and that we at least try. And we outline that, in our obligations that we take, in the rules that we set for ourselves, standards of how we treat other brothers and other men. But I think we need to pay more attention to how that gets done, because I think, and this is something that, like, I've sort of been on a bit of a crusade around this. I think that, just saying, like, you need to, use your time wisely because we have a limited amount of it, right, is not enough to have somebody understand how to suss out and understand what their values are and then act on those. Right. That's a process. It's a continuing work. And
I'll buy that.
And the lodges that are good, right, work on that. Right. That's the purpose of Masonic education, is to kind of.
Right. Sure. And again, you use that key word right there, which is they work at it.
Yeah.
And yeah. Yeah. But 100%.
Right. But I think that from an outward perspective, right, I think it like, we can't just sort of throw our hands up and say, well, people have, if some guy wants to, like, put on a square and compasses hat, right, and then go out and spout a bunch of racist nonsense, right? All we can do is throw our hands up and say, oh well, that guy's a jerk, or guys
Right.
are right.
Sure. Right.
That kind of behavior, with other kinds of moral behavior. So, for example, like in the 1830s, right, if you were publicly drunk, you had to answer to your lodge for it.
Right.
Right. You would get,
Sure.
the Grand Lodge proceedings have all kinds of instances where, said guy was arrested for public drunkenness, and what are we going to do about it? And today
I'd have
we'd be
lasted.
like, wow.
Yeah. 15 to 18 minutes I'd have lasted back then.
Yeah. Right.
Kicked out. Public drunkenness.
Yeah. At least a suspension. Right. So
Sure. I'd have been hauled in front of the Grandmaster many times.
So, so I think that there's that aspect of it. I think that we have a, and I'm not saying it's easy. And to go back to your question, like who does this? Like who's going to be in charge of deciding what our platform is? I think the thing to do, and it's interesting because I think, I don't know this for sure because I haven't talked to anybody over there. I think it would be really, this is a guy I want to get is the Sovereign Grand Commander of the North, right? Because they're putting a stake in the ground and saying that the purpose of Scottish Rite Freemasonry is to help our brethren. Right. And again, I don't know if that's the right thing or the wrong thing. Like, is that where they should be? But that to me is a really distinctive and purposeful mission that they've set for themselves, for ourselves, right? That moves Masonry forward in a way, right? What they're saying is we believe that it's important that brothers take care of brothers. Right. And so it doesn't mean that everybody has to do this, right? It doesn't mean that every Grand Lodge has to say, we sign the pledge that we're going to, it's that one prominent group came out and said, you know what, this is an important aspect of our fraternity. And this is what we stand for. And this is how we're going to go about, living up to that challenge. Right. And so I think that if, look, maybe it could be the conference of Grand Masters that says, you know what, racism has no place in Freemasonry, right? Now that probably won't happen for a while, right? Because we still have, Grand Lodges that don't recognize Prince Hall. We still have, right. But somebody should, and sometimes it's a movement. Yeah. Sometimes it's a groundswell, right?
Well, what's interesting about that whole thing, and I won't say too much about this, but for that to actually work, you need leadership. Yeah. One thing that this fraternity sorely lacks: leadership.
Yeah.
And that's too bad. I think that we have a lot of leaders, but very little leadership. And in my professional opinion, it's worse than that most of the time. And I had a conversation with a relatively prominent Mason about this last month or so, and he told me, he said, I look around and I think, how, and then I think, well, you got to be Grandmaster because there was no one better. And he said, and that's probably a function of the fact that our membership numbers have decreased. And we just don't have the collection of leadership talent of the people, the men that are qualified to lead, to do that, to be that leader, an inspirational leader. They just aren't members right now. And hopefully at some point they will be. And they'll, and they'll take up the mantle and they'll do leader-like things. But right now, I think we're in a period of Freemasonry where there's very little leadership. It's kind of a dark time, if you ask me.
Maybe I kind of think you're asking a lot of our leaders.
Yeah. Yeah.
What I would say is that if all of us started having these conversations, right, and start and not shy away from
Agreed.
social issues of the time,
Absolutely. Have some courage.
as being saying like, well, we have to be, like, and I see this a lot in Masonic boards on social media where they say, well,
absolutely,
we have to have a united front, which means that we cannot allow any sort of controversial or difficult conversations because it's going to serve to divide us. Right? We need to kind of push against that a little bit. I think that those kinds of conversations, if we can do it in a respectful and open way and have a dialogue and not a debate, right? This is, to me, this is
not a debate, but a dialogue. Correct. Yeah.
Because in a debate, you have a winner and a loser, and that feeds all back into that whole hyper masculinity thing of like,
100%.
If I lose the debate, I'm a weakling. No.
Right.
It's about trying to understand. But I think that we should not, as a fraternity, as a movement, we should not shy away from social issues, right?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I totally agree with that.
There was one more.
Social issues are not politics.
Yes, that's right. Right. And nor are civic issues for that matter.
Correct. Right? That's absolutely right. Right. 100%.
So there's one more thing, and that's that I think that some people, and I see this among people that I'm very close with in the fraternity, sort of regard, and this kind of goes back to sort of how we regard women and their place in society, right? Because that's certainly something that the Gillette ad kind of touched on, right? It's sort of how we treat women. There are guys who feel that our sort of no girls allowed policy, right, is sort of this last bastion, this safe space where we can be men without women. And so there's this whole like, well, we shouldn't be having ladies' nights, and we shouldn't be, like, why are we involving women, and, why does Eastern Star exist? And so, it's that kind of thing just sort of, it kind of makes me uncomfortable, because the fact of the matter is that we, at least those of us who are married, participate in this fraternity with the blessing of our spouse, right? So it's not that women aren't allowed. They're just, they're like, I guess what I'm saying is I don't think
I'm just waiting for you to dig yourself the hole of, they're not separate, Jason. They're equal. They're just separate. They're equal, but separate. Sorry.
So yeah. So what it is, I think for me is that it's necessary, because if your purpose is to teach men to care for each other in a masculine setting, and you've got women there, it's no longer a masculine setting. Now it's a mixed setting, and you're back to the same thing as the workplace and the sports field, 100%. And and so this is this one place where we can experiment, we can make mistakes, right? We can forgive each other, we can have fights, we can do all kinds of stuff without it kind of encroaching on our sense of manhood and raising the stakes, right? So that it becomes like it becomes a situation where we feel threatened, So I think it's important, just as women have, there's like exercise classes. There was a famous lawsuit. I can't remember the name of the chain, but there's a famous like fitness studio that was a women only fitness studio, and it was it was founded because what's it? No, Curves. It wasn't Curves. It was a different one, but it was founded because there were a lot of women who felt like by going to a mixed gym that they were being, ogled and hit on and stuff, and they wanted a safe space where they could just work out and not have to worry about dudes checking them out all the time, right? and they got sued, and they had to allow men in. And so I think that that's wrong. I think that is that sort of kills the whole reason for like, I think people need safe spaces like that, and I think Freemasonry is one of those one of those spaces.
So responding to my little rant about leadership, Jason Hecker said the ones that are good leaders need to be able to serve more than 1 year to really make things happen, which I love and I totally agree with. But Mike brings up a really good point, which is it's not necessary. It could work if the leadership works as a united team and they work through the line. If we can keep egos in check, key statement, if we can keep egos in check, then the next Grandmaster can continue what the previous Grandmaster started and still start something else himself. That is 100% true. I'll believe it when I see it.
Well, and that brings us kind of full circle, right? And that kind of thing.
Yes, it does.
Right? That kind of thing can only happen. That can only happen when, as a fraternity, as a movement, right, we have a clear sense of what our purpose is. If we're all aligned to the same purpose, then it's natural for the the continuation of not just the Grandmaster, right, but the master of the lodge, right? Your lodge.
Everybody's on board.
Everybody's on board, right? So when you look at some of the really strong lodges around the country, right, they have a strong sense of what they're there for, and a strong sense of their values, and so you get that continuity from leader to leader. When you don't have that, and you're not willing to do the hard work of having those sometimes uncomfortable discussions.
That's right.
To figure that out, then you get whatever the Grandmaster or the Master of the Lodge at the time, whatever's right in front of them. And more often than that, it's numbers. And I think that that's kind of unfortunate.
Yeah.
Anything else in social media that we missed?
No, I think that's pretty good. You can scroll if you wish.
I'm scrolling.
I think we did good.
Well, Abe said about 11 minutes ago, he said, many lodges get together to read minutes, pay bills, and argue for an hour on how to spend the money. Few lodges are engaged in meaningful Masonic education. And I think that's true.
It is true. And here's the key to that is find one that's better than that. Vote with your feet.
Or simply start, like I said in the last
do your own
episode,
thing.
The best way to complain is to make things.
Yeah, there you go. 100%.
Bring some Masonic education to your lodge. Just something, one thing, anything. Bring this show. Right? People contact me all the time and say, "Hey, can I use your show for an educational program in my lodge?" Absolutely. All we ask is that you just let us know so we can toot our horn, right? But
and I can weep for the youth.
And we could weep for the youth. Yeah.
Yeah, they're using us as some paradigm.
Well, listen, I hope you guys got something out of this. I love having conversations like this, Jason.
So do I. It's great.
Yeah, it's completely awesome. Like I said, if you're going to be at Masonic Week, let me know. Even if we can't make something happen, it'd be nice to shake your hand. If you're not going to be at Masonic Week, consider coming to Masonic Week. It's a blast.
It's lots of fun.
Again, if you want to become an executive producer, visit us at our Patreon page. It's patreon.com/X-Oriente, and pledge to keep the show going. We're continually making improvements, and we're going to do like the master calendar for the season, which we're going to start lining up guests and stuff. So we'll have more voices on the show. And let us know what you think. If you disagree with what we're saying, that's cool. We want to hear about it. Drop us a line at xoriente@gmail.com, or leave a comment on Facebook, or ping us on Facebook Messenger. We're happy to respond. Anything else?
No, that does it.
Cool.
You do a damn fine wrap up.
Thank you. Thanks very much. All right. Well, that's about it for the show. We'll be back hopefully on Sunday back to our regular scheduled time. We would have done it yesterday, but then I never would have hit the end of it from the Masonic Roundtable guys. And probably rightfully so.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. We don't want to steal all their people.
Yeah. True. All right. Well, that's that's a wrap for us. Until next time. Thanks, everybody. Fiat Vox.
Fiat Vox, everyone.